Chapter 8 11 Refugees. Soon Wanshi was so frightened that she almost collapsed. Her eyes rolled back and she fainted. When the people who followed behind saw this scene, some of them couldn't help but vomit on the spot. The foreigner by MO held his head with both hands and shouted, "OMG! My God, this is hell. Is Satan here?" They had seen dead people and thought their willpower was strong enough. But human nature made them unable to endure such a scene. Zhang Yi looked at them curiously and asked Li Zhongyu, "Why, you haven't eaten it before?" Li Zhongyu's face was pale, and it was obvious that his mentality had also been greatly tested. However, he said angrily, "We are human beings, not animals. How could we do such a thing?" His girlfriend Zhang Weiwei also came over angrily and looked at Zhang Yi fearlessly. "Mr. Zhang, please don't insult our dignity. Even if we starve to death, we can't eat this kind of thing." Zhang Yi smiled. "Then how do you solve the problem of food?" Zhang Weiwei said, "Because it is a tourist island, there is a lot of food stored here all year round. We lived in the hotel on the island at the beginning, and the food in the warehouse kept us going for a few months. Later, it was Zhongyu and his friends who went out hunting. The aquatic resources around Yanlu Island are very rich, and we can survive by eating aquatic products." Zhang Yi said, "This is a tropical area, minus 20 degrees Celsius, and the fish near the coast are probably gone." Zhang Weiwei blinked. "There is a giant turtle near Yanlu Island, which is one of the local characteristics. It has a strong vitality, so we mainly rely on it to survive." Zhang Yi lowered his eyes and suddenly raised his head to look at Li Zhongyu. "Is the turtle soup delicious?" Li Zhongyu looked aside. "It's good to be full. There is no taste." He pulled Zhang Weiwei over and asked her to take the students out. It was too bloody here and not suitable for them. Zhang Yi brought them here to teach Sun Wanshi a lesson, to make her shut up and not bother him. It was also a warning to others. Zhu Yonk had already run outside to vomit. I'm afraid she was cursing Zhang Yi for showing her these things. However, these scenes were small scenes for Zhang Yi and the crew. They had seen more miserable scenes when they survived in Tianhai City. For example, have you ever seen hundreds of thousands of zombies attacking the human camp and then biting humans alive until only bones were left? Small scenes. These are all small scenes. Zhang Yi glanced at the unconscious Sun Wanshi and felt a little dull. She was arrogant, but not very courageous. He originally planned to give her a dish of original 9-turn large intestine, but she was lucky and fainted. According to Zhang Yi's character, he really wanted to throw this woman on the island and let her fend for herself. But Zhu Zheng had requested that all the people in the Yanlu group must be taken back to prevent the secret from being leaked. Secondly, because of the presence of Li Zhongyu and others, Zhang Yi couldn't do things too radically. So he called 2 men from the Yanlu group, took Sun Wanshi with him, and then left the magic cave and headed for the port. After a while, they arrived near the port. But when they went there, it was deserted, with only corpses on the ground. When they came back, the port was crowded with people, noisy like a vegetable market. Zhang Yi keenly discovered that the corpses near the port had disappeared. He understood it in his heart, but he didn't have too many opinions after all. This kind of thing is also very common. The Jinfeng stayed at the port, and Lao Tian asked every crew member to hold a submachine gun and guard it strictly, not allowing any refugees to board the ship. But there were too many refugees here, plus local residents all over the port, and there were thousands of people. And people continued to rush here from other directions of the island. Some cunning ones even tried to sneak onto the ship from the sea in the low temperature of more than 20 degrees below zero. Old Tian had no choice but to fire into the air and use rubber bullets to drive them away. "Get out of the way. Our captain is not here now. No one should get close. Otherwise, I will shoot." Old Tian was not a soft-hearted person, but he knew that Zhang Yi came to the island to pick up people, and he could not figure out whether these people in front of him were the targets that Zhang Yi wanted to pick up, so he did not dare to shoot rashly. Such behavior, on the contrary, fueled the arrogance of a group of people. Some people took out their Rolex gold watches and tried to bribe old Tian. "I still have more than 1 billion in savings. As long as you take me away, I will give you half." This gold watch is the deposit. Some people held their children and tried to gain sympathy. Please take us mother and son away, otherwise we will die sooner or later on this island. Shouldn't women and children be given priority at this time? Hey, all of you make way, and let us get on the boat first. Some people also took out their identity backgrounds. Some said that their second uncle was an important official in a certain department of Huaxi State, and some said that their father was a senior leader of the Jiangnan district. They kowtowed and begged for mercy just to get old Tian to let them get on board. Thousands of people were talking about their reasons. In fact, they only had one request, which was to take them away from this hellhole. Because there were too many people, and even crowded together, many people fell into the sea and screamed in the icy water. Zhu Yonk was stunned. Why are there so many people on the islands? Tropical islands are like this. Originally, those who come here for vacation are all rich people. How could they let themselves go hungry and drink less? Zhang Yi sneered. What's more, even if the food is eaten up, don't we still have reserve food? Zhu Yonk looked at Zhang Yi in surprise. Reserve food? Do you mean the seafood in the sea? Zhang Yi said lightly. One year there was a famine, and many people starved to death. Emperor Hui of Jin said, why not eat meat porridge? People laughed at Emperor Hui of Jin for being stupid. But if you think about it from another angle, this sentence is actually very scary. Zhu Yonk immediately understood what Zhang Yi meant, and coupled with the scene of Shura hell she just saw, she was horrified. Let's go. We don't have time to waste here. There are too many poor people in the world. How can I take care of them all? Zhang Yi raised his gun and fired at the sky. It immediately attracted the attention of a group of people. Their combat uniforms were too conspicuous, and it was obvious that they were people on the ship. Smart people immediately came over to beg. Please take us away. I am from Huaxu country. Listen to my accent. It's so pure. Woishi Huaxu Guoren. My uncle, Daiwa Zhou. My Huaxu countrymen work. In order to get on the ship, a group of foreigners also showed their skills. Many of them knew a little Chinese, but they could tell them apart by listening when they were communicating. Some people kneel down. Chapter 8:12 My rules are rules. Zhang Yi said coldly, get out of the way. We will discuss your affairs slowly after we get on the boat. But those people were not stupid. They would not leave without Zhang Yi's promise. No, you have to promise us first and take us away. We don't want to stay on this island for a second. This is simply hell on earth. Zhang Yi saw that some people in the crowd were even ready to move. Their ferocious eyes showed that they wanted to kill many people. A sneer appeared on Zhang Yi's lips. It seems that some guys want to hold them hostage and then seize the boat. Zhu Yonk and others were behind Zhang Yi, with a tangled face, not knowing what to do. Zhu Yonk murmured, there are too many people. The gene foam can't take them away. Otherwise, she didn't finish the second half of the sentence. Otherwise, according to her style of doing things, she would really take these people away. As for the people of the Yenlu group, they were extremely glad that they followed Zhang Yi out of the cave. There are so many people in front of them, and they don't want to take them away if they want to leave. Zhang Yi took out a pistol from his waist. Without saying anything, he aimed at the foreign devils who had just spoken and pretended to be Huaxu people and fired 2 shots. The first shot killed the guy from Neon. With someone dead in front of them, the refugees finally showed fear on their faces. I'll say it one last time. Get out of the way. All the crew members understood and directly picked up their submachine guns, deliberately pulling the bolt with a click. As long as Zhang Yi gave an order, they would shoot without hesitation and kill anyone who blocked the way. Some people who stood in front of Zhang Yi and his men retreated in fear, and a road slowly appeared. Zhang Yi stepped forward, and suddenly the group of people around him knelt down with a thump. Please, save us. If we continue to stay here, we will all die, for God's sake. A blonde woman pleaded with tears in her eyes and a sad face. Zhang Yi turned a deaf ear to him. He was not very interested in such things. A man kept kowtowing. I know there are too many people, and you can't take care of them all. Can you let my child get on the boat? He is only 8 years old, and he has a bright future. Zhang Yi led the Yenlu group and walked forward among the kneeling people. Strangely, facing these pitiful moral kidnappings, Zhang Yi was numb. Oh, this feeling has happened before. When he still lived in Yuelu community, those neighbors who had stabbed him also begged him in this way. Zhang Yi was indifferent, but Zhu Yonk had never experienced such a scene. This young lady lived in Blizzard City even after the end of the world. The biggest worry is probably not being able to eat fresh vegetables and not being able to use the latest cosmetics. A woman from Huashu country was holding a child in her arms. Seeing Zhu Yonk's reluctant expression, she moved forward on her knees as if she had grasped the last straw of hope. A crew member immediately pointed a gun at her. "What are you doing?" The woman did not dare to move forward, so she could only hold the child high and cry and beg Zhu Yonk, "For the sake of our compatriots, save my child." Zhu Yonk could no longer bear it, and she pulled Zhang Yi's sleeve.
Well.
Zhang Yi turned around and looked at her. His eyes were very cold. Zhu Yonk gritted his teeth and said, "At least, take our compatriots away. There should be space on the ship, and it is not a problem to accommodate hundreds of people." Zhu Yonk's words were heard by the people around, and they immediately shouted, as if they saw the only hope. "I am a Huashu countryman. I am a Huashu countryman. Compatriots, take me away. Huashu people should help each other, right?" Zhang Yi frowned. He had never been abroad in his life, nor had he come into contact with many foreigners. But he was also cheated. Could it be that all the people who cheated him were foreigners? He saw the mother and son. Although the mother was a little haggard, she still had her charm. How many of these people who came to Yenlu Island for vacation, whether they were Huashu people or expatriates, were not once pampered? Zhang Yi was not a cold-blooded animal, but he cared most about his own interests. If he were to take these people away, it would undoubtedly cause him some trouble. And he has always been a person who hates trouble. At this time, someone in the crowd took the lead and sang the national anthem of Huashu. Slowly, the whole port was filled with loud singing. They looked tired, but their voices were high-pitched, and their eyes were all looking at Zhang Yi, full of hope and pleading. And a group of foreigners were mixed in, opening their mouths and pretending that they could sing. The funniest thing was a group of blonde and blue-eyed foreigners who were also pretending there. Zhang Yi was thinking in his heart, it was not impossible to take some people back. According to the previous discussion with Zhu Zheng, he would take some people back to supplement the labor force in Tianhai City. After taking these people back, they only needed to give them a few full meals, which were good quality and cheap. But he couldn't really take so many people away. Zhou Kuter saw Zhang Yi's hesitation and came over to say, "Take the citizens of Huashu back." Tianhai City is now in a population decline, and several major bases also need to add manpower. Keeping them is still useful. Zhou Kuter understood Zhang Yi's mind best. He never did things that were thankless. This reason was very sufficient. So Zhang Yi nodded. Indeed, Tianhai City now needs a group of laborers. So he said to Zhu Yonk, "For your sake, I can take the people of Huashu back." This was the first time Zhang Yi listened to Zhu Yonk's suggestion, and she was very happy. Like a child who got candy, she shouted happily, "All the citizens of Huashu come here to report." Zhang Yi said loudly, "Everyone must be checked and confirmed to be a Huashu citizen before they can board the ship. After boarding the ship, you must obey all arrangements, otherwise you will be driven off directly." There was a jubilation among the crowd. Those citizens of Huashu cried with joy and smiled. But most of the people on the island were foreigners, so they were not happy. Someone pointed at Bai Mo in the Rock Flow group and shouted, "Why can he get on the boat since he is also a foreigner? This is not fair." Yes, this is not fair. A group of people found a breakthrough and quickly followed suit. Bai Mo was frightened and ran over to hug his thigh. "Oh, Mr. Zhang, I am a spiritual Huashu countryman. I can swear to the God I believe in. I will change my nationality immediately after returning." Zhang Yi couldn't help laughing. He glanced at those who were making trouble and sneered. "Fairness? What is that? Do you think I am here to talk about fairness with you? If you have the ability, let people from your own country come to save you, instead of shouting here." The crowd became more and more chaotic, and the dissatisfaction of those foreigners could no longer be controlled. In the crowd, several foreign men slowly walked toward Zhang Yi, and then suddenly pointed their guns at Zhang Yi and the people around him and shot. But the bullets were like a drop in the ocean, without a single ripple. Zhang Yi didn't even look at them. He drew his gun with both hands and shot at the crowd at a high speed.
Bang. Bang.
Bang. Bang. Bang.
Bang.
Firing a gun in a dense crowd is an extremely dangerous thing, and it is easy to cause accidental injuries.
But this kind of thing does not exist for Zhang Yi.
Chapter 813 Screening, Ad 1. Zhang Yi emptied the magazine directly and shot all the gunmen in the crowd in the head. Not only the shooters, but also those who made him feel bad. There is no shortage of killers on the island. At least 1/3 of all the people here have killed people with their own hands. Regardless of whether they intend to attack Zhang Yi and kill them, Zhang Yi has no guilt at all. All the crew members raised their guns and were on guard. Zhang Yi changed the magazine with one hand, and there were another 40 bullets in his hand. Does anyone else have any objections? Who dared to have any objections? The ability shown by Zhang Yi made everyone think they had seen Superman. Some people on the island did have awakened superpowers, so they had a certain understanding of this. It's just that they have never seen a strange person as powerful and terrifying as Zhang Yi. Everyone stepped aside timidly and never dared to block Zhang Yi's way again. Zhang Yi brought his men to the port, and he said to Lao Tian, "Strictly adhere to the standards and don't let anyone who is not a Huashu nationality get on board." Lao Tian scratched his head. "Mr. Zhang, how can we determine whether they are Huashu nationality? It may be difficult to ask them to show their ID cards now. You figure it out yourself," Zhang Yi said indifferently. He always has to make decisions, so what are you subordinates for? Zhang Yi asked the people of the Yenlu group to go to the deck first. The room for them to stay had been prepared long ago, on the second floor below the cabin. The space is not large, but it is more than enough to accommodate them and can guarantee basic survival. Lao Tian called a few crew members and started recruiting new people on the spot. Everyone line up in 2 teams and come one by one. Those who are not Huashu nationality can leave early and waste less time here. Lao Tian shouted with a loudspeaker and then said to several crew members, "This is the easiest time to get confused. If there are desperate people, don't hold back. Just kill them directly." The crew members sneered and nodded. This scene is just a small scene for them. When the end of the world came, the fighting in Chaoyu Harbor was even more brutal for survival. Soon, 2 long queues formed at the port. Zhang Yi did not board the ship, but watched from behind to avoid any chaos here. He took out 2 sofa chairs directly from the alien space and asked Zhou Kuer to sit next to him. The two watched the show while eating melon seeds. Zhu Yonk did not have this treatment. She snorted lightly and stood aside with her arms folded. She looked a bit like a maid serving the 2 people. After feeling something was wrong, she walked to the side again. The 2 long queues were mixed with all kinds of people, and no one wanted to miss this opportunity. Even if they were not from Huashu, they planned to give it a try. The first person who came for the interview walked up to Lao Tian. Lao Tian stared. "Palace Jade Liquor." The man was stunned for a moment, and then hurriedly replied, 180 per cup. Lao Tian smiled and raised his thumb back. "Passed. Wait on the deck." The man was so excited that he almost fainted on the spot and hurried to board the ship. Seeing this, the people behind them started chattering as if they understood the test questions. Nothing else, just to cram for the common sense of Huashu country. Another person came. Lao Tian, "What is a gathering of heroes?" The man hurriedly laughed and said, "What gathering of heroes? I think it's a meeting of carrots." So this person also passed smoothly. He looked back a little proudly, made a victory gesture, and then hurriedly boarded the ship along the gangway. When passing by Zhang Yi and others, he bowed politely to express his gratitude to Zhang Yi. The crew's daily fun is to play these games, watch movies and TV dramas, or listen to the radio, so there are a lot of tricks. And it can also be guaranteed that they are not repeated. Let me ask you, under what circumstances does 1 + 1 = 3?
Ah?
What kind of question is this? In front of him was a bearded man, who was confused when he heard the question. Old Tian glared at him. I can tell at a glance that you are not a human. No, you are not from Huaxiu. Go and have fun. The man was anxious. No, brother, uncle. Listen to my accent. I am a native of Guangdong. Old Tian snorted. What's wrong with being from Guangdong? Can people from Guangdong not watch the Spring Festival Gala? If you can't answer the questions, you can't get on the boat. The man wanted to cry but had no tears. Not watching the Spring Festival Gala is not a sin. Old Tian certainly knew that this guy was from Huaxiu. In terms of accent, foreigners rarely have such standard pronunciation. Okay, you get on. The man was grateful and ran to the boat in a hurry as if he was afraid that old Tian would regret it. The next one was a skinny young man with a strange accent. Hello, boss, I am from Huaxiu. I am a native of Huaxiu, you see. I still have my ID card. Can you let me on? Old Tian took the ID card and saw the 3 words, Jin Xiangtai, written on it. He stared at Jin Xiangtai for a few seconds. But why do you look like a Silla person? And your accent is a bit strange. Jin Xiangtai panicked and hurriedly explained, No, I'm not from Silla. I was born and raised in Xizjiang, and my accent comes from eating kebabs. Lao Tian touched his chin and suddenly asked, What kind of hair oil do you use? King. I use King. Jin Xiangtai replied quickly. Lao Tian laughed. I also use King. Okay, you can go up. The skinny monkey nodded and bowed, almost bowing to the ground. Thank you for the 100 passes, boss. But at this moment, a person suddenly shouted in Silla from behind. He is not from Huaxiu, he is from Silla, he is from Silla. They are all fake, he is a liar, and he can't be allowed on board. Jin Xiangtai looked back and saw that it was his old friend Shui Zihao. Jin Xiangtai said contemptuously, Look, I have an ID card from Huaxiu, and Huaxiu is my favorite. I asked you to come with me, but you disagreed. Do you regret it now? Shui Zihao's face flushed with anger, and his temperature rose all of a sudden. Damn it, old ma. Shake it. Chinese is so difficult to learn, I can't learn it. Jin Xiangtai suddenly glared. What's difficult to learn? What's difficult to learn? It's always been like this. You say Chinese is difficult to learn. Why don't you think about whether you have worked hard to learn these years and improve your Chinese level, instead of regretting it now when you need it? Shui Zihao was almost angry to the point of being a red-hot gas tank. But he could only watch Jin Xiangtai board the ship triumphantly. Because they knew how powerful Zhang Yi and others were, and because Zhang Yi was ruthless and pulled out a gun to kill people without saying a word, the order at the scene was generally peaceful. Even if some people were identified as foreigners, they would at most kneel down and kowtow, cry, and throw tantrums. But this approach had no effect. The people in Tianhai City had seen much more terrible hell than them, so who would be soft-hearted? Chapter 8:14 Black Dragon is also a dragon. The process of screening passengers was generally peaceful, but when a mother came across a problem, something went wrong. A woman came with a child. She did pass Lao Tian's test, and Lao Tian agreed to let her board the ship. However, Lao Tian stopped her child and said he would not let him get on board. The woman burst into tears and started crying and shouting at the port. I am from Huaxiu country. Look, I am from Huaxiu country from beginning to end. Why don't you let me get on board? Lao Tian said coldly, Madam, you are from Huaxiu country. But the child you brought, you treat us as fools, don't you? Zhang Yi also looked over with some curiosity. As a result, he laughed immediately. The woman was accompanied by a child, 7 or 8 years old, who looked very healthy, with big eyes looking at the people around innocently, not knowing what he had done wrong. The only problem is his skin color. Yes, he is a black boy. Old Tian said, Don't treat us as fools. How could your child be this color? We said that only Huaxiu people are allowed to board the ship. Even if you are an overseas Chinese, I can tolerate it. This kind of thing. Are you fooling the devils? The woman became emotional when she heard this. I didn't lie. He is really my child. He was born to Morian and me. At this time, the eyes of old Tian and several crew members, including Zhang Yi, changed. Originally, They thought that the woman was just smuggling a black child on board. But now it seems that this woman married a black husband and gave birth to a black child? This kind of thing made the people who had boarded the ship and were watching the excitement talk about it. This freedom of marriage, it's hard to comment. It's just that for me, it's not very acceptable. Zhang Yi stood up, walked over, and waved to the woman. Sorry, my ship will not accommodate you and your child. Leave. The woman's eyes widened when she saw this, and she looked at Zhang Yi in disbelief. But I am a Huaxiu national. My son is also. Aren't you a rescue ship sent by Huaxiu? Why don't you let us on board? She was trembling with fear. Originally, it was only her son who couldn't get on the boat, but now she didn't even have the qualifications. She was scared. A tall black man came out from the crowd. He was the woman's husband, Morian. Hi, man. It's wrong for you to do this. It's racial discrimination. I firmly protest. Zhang Yi sneered. Can you get out? This is my boat. I can let anyone on board. The black man looked a little embarrassed, but my wife and children are both Huaxiu nationals. They are your compatriots. As soon as these words came out, the scene exploded. Zhang Yi's face changed immediately. This is your uncle's compatriots. All the Chinese at the scene were cursing. Nigga, don't talk nonsense here. Who is your compatriots? It's just an ID card and a household registration book. We have no blood relationship.
Don't come to discuss me.
The woman seemed to want to fight for it. She patted her child. The little black boy looked very smart. He walked forward and actually recited an article, I love my motherland, loudly. I, Chocolate, was born in Huaxiu country. I love my motherland. Don't doubt my sincerity because of my skin color. Black Dragon is also a dragon. Zhang Yi felt his stomach churning.
He wanted to vomit now.
Some people on the boat couldn't stand it. Ma Wenjing lay on the edge of the boat and shouted, Hey, black boy, you don't belong to Huaxiu country. This is not the place for you to come. The little black boy was anxious. He also knew that this ship was their hope to survive. So he pointed at Ma Wenjing on the boat and shouted angrily, You're the ones who should get out. However, some people held different opinions. For example, the foreign-loving dog Zhou Andy before. He pushed his glasses and said with a look of concern for the country and the people, he is a child after all. No matter where his father comes from, his mother is from Huaxiu. Seeing the eyes cast around him, he explained openly. Historically speaking, the Huaxiu nation is a large integrated nation. In history, we even had Kunlun slaves. I don't think we can accept them. Haiwa's mother was still begging Zhang Yi. Please treat us equally. We are Huaxiu people. You can't discriminate against us. This is wrong. Zhang Yi touched his nose. In fact, I am not very educated. I don't have a strong ideological awareness. He smiled at the woman who married a black man, pointed at her and her child, and said, I just hate people like you. So don't even think about getting on my ship today. The woman pointed at Zhang Yi and almost couldn't breathe. You bully people.
Wow.
She actually directly. Then she burst into tears in front of everyone. You are so bullying. This is unfair. Why can't you let us get on the boat? What's wrong with us? Zhang Yi laughed and said, No, you are in compliance with the regulations. But I just won't let you get on the boat. Don't you think this is fun? Zhang Yi leaned down to look at her with a mean look. Are you angry? He was too lazy to reason with such a mentally ill person and preferred to play a straight ball. The woman cried loudly while holding the child. Seeing this, Morian knew that he had lost hope and shook his head helplessly. Then he ignored his wife and children and disappeared silently in the crowd. Originally, he and the woman had agreed that after the woman got on the boat, he would secretly find a way to throw a rope down for him to climb up. Now that he saw that there was no chance, he was unwilling to bear this burden. As before, he decided to get rid of these two burdens. The woman and the little black boy cried heartbreakingly at the port. Some people couldn't stand it anymore and reached out to pull the woman and the child away. The woman slapped the ground and shouted, I won't leave. I won't leave. The people around her became impatient. Do whatever you want. Don't block our way. We are still waiting to get on the boat. Now it's not like before. She can morally blackmail Zhang Yi by holding her child and crying for a while. Everyone is very busy and can't take care of themselves. How can they watch her make a scene here, which will only make people feel disgusted? However, after the woman made such a fuss, a new round of chaos began at the scene. Because in this process, some people really showed compassion for the child. This rekindled hope in some people's hearts. A blonde woman came over with a child and went straight to Zhang Yi. Her face had lost hope of life, and she was numb like a cold puppet. Can you save the child? He is still young, and I don't want him to end his life like this. It doesn't matter if I die, as long as my son can live. Chapter 8:15. You are noble, and you are amazing. Zhang Yi looked down at the baby in her arms. His white and tender skin was like ice and snow. He slept quietly and breathed softly, which made people feel pity. In Zhang Yi's mind, he couldn't help but think of the time when the end of the world just came. He also came into contact with such a small child. That was Xieli Mei's daughter. At the beginning, she survived by taking advantage of Uncle Yu's sympathy, but was eventually dealt with by Zhang Yi. In the end, her daughter didn't survive and froze to death on a snowstorm night. When people saw this scene, they all felt sorry. Protecting young children is the instinct of living things. Save the child. At least let the child live. It's just a child. It won't take much of your food. Give the child a chance. The crowd on the shore began to shout loudly. Various languages expressed the same emotion. Some parents also came over with their children and looked at Zhang Yi with pleading eyes. Zhang Yi's eyes showed a look of reminiscence. He missed his hometown and the prosperous years. They all disappear with time. If it weren't for the end of the world, many children in Tianhai City would have lived happily. He looked up at the mother. Thank you for reminding me that children are the hope of the future. The mother's numb eyes gradually lit up. Then, my child will... Zhang Yi continued. So after I go back, I plan to donate some supplies to my hometown city to those children who are living in poverty. The mother was stunned on the spot, and others didn't expect Zhang Yi to be so heartless. Hey, are you still a man? Just watch someone die. A bearded man shouted angrily. It's okay for you to ignore us adults, but you can even watch a child fall into despair. Are you still a human being? A man from Britannia shook his head. How can the men of Huashu country not even have the basic spirit of a gentleman? This is really hateful. A group of people were ignited and angrily denounced Zhang Yi, thinking that he was too cold-blooded and heartless. Zhu Yang couldn't help but take a step forward. She looked at the little child in the cradle and said to Zhang Yi, "Why don't you take the children away? They are the hope of the future. The world has not ended yet, and the children are tomorrow." This lady said it well. The children are tomorrow. Without the children, if you live on, will there be a future for mankind? Someone immediately applauded Zhu Yang's words. The voice came from the ship, and the speaker was the fake foreigner Zhou Andy. He was indignant and leaning on the railing, patting his chest with one hand. Save the children. Don't be such a cold-blooded person, he said, and encouraged the people around him to shout together. The children are innocent. The children are innocent. Many people were infected by Zhou Andy's voice and shouted to Zhang Yi in unison. The children are innocent. Save the children. They looked at Zhang Yi indignantly, and they all felt that Zhang Yi's heart was too cold and hard, and he almost lost his humanity. And this practice of condemning Zhang Yi together made them feel that their souls were sublimated and their qualities became noble. Even if these people had eaten white meat not long ago. But they always liked to be lenient with themselves and strict with others. Zhang Yi didn't expect that this group of people likes to be lively so much. He couldn't help but think of the neighbors in Yuelu community. They have really experienced desperate situations, so although they are cruel, they at least understand the humility that humans should have. But these guys in front of him lack the basic respect for life. They have been on the island for a long time, and they don't seem to understand what the world has become. Zhu Yang whispered, "Take the children with you. They don't take up much space.
They don't eat much."
Zhang Yi sneered and put his hands in his pockets. He turned his head and stared at Zhu Yang and asked back, "Oh? It's so simple. There are so many people here. There are at least 100 children. Many are 2 or 3 years old, and there are even babies in swaddling clothes. Can you take care of them? Do you know how troublesome it is to take care of them? It takes 2 months to sail on the sea, and you will be exhausted just to take care of so many children. Besides, even if I can save them, why should I save them? Zhang Yi said loudly. This made many people glare at him. Zhang Yi ignored it and continued, My city has a population of 20 million. There are not many children this age, at least hundreds of thousands, right? But what about after the end of the world? How many of them survived? There should be no more than 100 in total. Who cares about their life or death? Oh no, who can care about their life or death? Zhang Yi sneered. In the land of Huaxiu, there are still many people living on the line between life and death. If I have the ability, why don't I save my compatriots first? He pointed at the baby in the mother's arms. Yes, he is very pitiful, dying at such a young age. But what does that have to do with me? What obligation do I have to help him? It is better to use the extra thoughts of caring for others to help my compatriots around me. Zhou Andy on the boat shouted, These are all your excuses. Since you have the ability, why don't you save more people? Do you know that if possible, we would rather leave the chance of life to children? Zhang Yi didn't want to pay attention to this waste, but after hearing this, he slowly turned his head and stared at Zhou Andy with a smile. Is this what you said? Zhou Andy was instantly chilled from head to toe when Zhang Yi looked at him. He just wanted to highlight his gentlemanliness and nobleness so that everyone would look up to him, so he deliberately sang against Zhang Yi. But how many people has Zhang Yi killed? He has killed several reinforced regiments of stupid dogs like Zhou Andy. This one look made his back cold. Pa pa pa. Zhang Yi clapped his hands and said approvingly, Good, very good, very good. I admire people like you who are full of benevolence and morality. Since you are so noble and so great, then I will give you this opportunity. Zhang Yi winked at the crew on the ship. Immediately, a crew member walked over and held Zhou Andy. Zhou Andy panicked. What are you doing? Let me go, let me go. The crew member was full of sarcasm. Silly cup. Who do you think you are talking to? Our captain is a famous devil in Huaxi country. If you provoke him, you are dead. As he said, he pressed Zhou Andy directly and walked under the ship. Zhang Yi said, Since you are so noble and willing to sacrifice yourself to save others, a gentleman helps others to achieve their goals. Of course, I will give you this opportunity. Now, you can get off the boat. But I can also fulfill your wish and help you rescue a child. Chapter 8:16. Port Life. At Zhang Yi's signal, Zhu Yonk hurriedly took the child from his mother's arms. A smile appeared on the woman's face. She looked at her child reluctantly, one last time, and then waved her hand to say goodbye. They will never meet again in this life. My child, you have to grow up well and live well. She had no other wishes and slowly left here, like a walking corpse, waiting for the end of her life. When Zhou Andy was pressed off the boat, he began to panic. Wait a minute, I don't mean that. I just said that I can help take care of the child. Mr. Zhang, there is no need to do this, I'm kidding. I'm really just talking. He followed the booing and thought it was okay, thinking that the law does not punish the masses, so he shouted loudly. But when the disaster came to him, he admitted his mistakes faster than anyone else. It's a pity that he didn't have a chance. Zhang Yi didn't even look at him, but smiled and said, What a kind and good person. He looked at the crowd and said such words to everyone present. I know some people just thought I was too cruel and merciless. I'm really sorry. The resources on our ship are limited. It takes more than 3,000 kilometers to get back to Huaxi from here, and we can't take too many people. He stood aside and pointed to his side. But don't say, I don't know how to adapt. Now, if there is anyone who is upright and willing to give up his chance to board the ship to those poor children, I will definitely agree. Come on, who has this plan now? Immediately come to me. The Huaxi people in the queue shut their mouths one by one. Those on the ship had learned from the previous experience and did not dare to join in the booing. They watched Zhou Andy being thrown off the ship with their own eyes. Then he knelt on the ground and begged Zhang Yi to forgive him like a dog, saying that he was wrong. But Zhang Yi didn't look at him again. So annoying, stupid dog. The crew member felt that Zhou Andy was too noisy, so he gave him a gun butt and knocked him out. Seeing this, the parents with children went to beg the Huaxi people in the team again. Li, we have been friends for many years. Please help me, and let Selena live. Get out of here. If she lives, I have to die. We're just working together. Who is your good friend? Zhou. I can give you all my money. Just ask you to give me the quota. Go to hell, ha ha ha. What I hate most is your proud face. I am more happy than anyone to see you die. All kinds of people appeared at the port. In the end, everyone was just full of benevolence and morality in their mouths. But once they need to pay for their own tickets, they are more stingy than anyone else. Not to mention these foreign friends. Even if their biological fathers come, they may not be willing to exchange. Zhang Yi said to Zhu Yonk, who was taking care of the child next to him, "You see, these people are like this, and the outside world is like this too.
Just get used to it."
In fact, there is no need to be kind to them. Zhu Yonk was speechless, but held the baby in her arms tightly, with tenderness in her eyes. Zhang Yi just shrugged. Zhu Yonk was too naive, but she will soon pay the price for her youth. He didn't want to simply judge whether Zhu Yonk was a good woman or a bad woman. Perhaps out of maternal instinct, she had her kind side. But this kind of good quality is really bad in the end times. Zhang Yi said in his heart, "You should be grateful that you have a good uncle. Otherwise, you would be the first one I threw into the sea to feed the fish." Although Zhang Yi didn't like Zhu Young's way of doing things, he had to take care of Zhu Young's ideas for the sake of Zhu Zheng's face. As Zhou Ke said, beating a dog depends on the owner. Even if Zhang Yi doesn't care about Zhu Young having one more friend, at least he doesn't want to have one more enemy. Don't provoke a woman, especially a woman with a background. She is very vengeful and can hate you for a lifetime. Zhou Ke analyzed it to Zhang Yi from a woman's perspective with a smile. Zhang Yi felt that Zhu Young should be taught a lesson to cure her boring kindness. He looked at the child in Zhu Young's arms, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. I believe that it won't be long before Zhu Young will suffer for her behavior. That will definitely be very interesting. After more than an hour of investigation, it was discovered that there were more than 200 Huaxu people on Yanlu Island. Of course, there were also expatriates among them, but it made no difference to Zhang Yi now. All he needed was a group of laborers to bring to Tianhai City, and a simple screening would be enough. These people were carefully checked and confirmed that no one was carrying weapons and communication equipment before they were allowed to board the ship. More than 200 people were not many, but the living space in the cabin seemed crowded. Zhang Yi didn't care about it. As long as we can give them a place to live, it's good enough. I don't believe they dare to be picky. Everyone got on the boat, and Zhang Yi first asked Lao Tian to give them a good lesson and tell them the rules on the boat. All the rules can be summed up in one sentence: unconditionally obey the orders of Captain Zhang and the crew. If anyone dares to openly contradict, they will be thrown directly into the sea to feed the sharks. The living area of the cabin is divided into 3 floors and 4 standards. The top floor is the living area for Zhang Yi and the crew. Zhang Yi and Zhou Ke have the best living area. The captain's bedroom has sufficient heating and hot water supply, and the independent room is more than 50 square meters, which is very luxurious. Next is Zhu Yonk and the crew. They live on the same floor as Zhang Yi. Zhu Yonk and Lao Tian both have single rooms, and the crew have standard double rooms. The room is not particularly spacious, but it is also warm and comfortable. The third level, located in the middle floor of the cabin, is where the people of the Rock Flow group live. The environment here is a bit crowded. 7 or 8 people are crowded in a narrow room, and they will not be given. They are divided into men and women, and they are assigned rooms by themselves. If the distribution is uneven, men and women can only live together. At this time, there is no need to talk about respecting privacy. The 4th level is located in the lower level of the cabin. It is where other Huaxi citizens and overseas Chinese who were brought back live on the bottom floor of the Jinfeng. Originally, This was a utility room, which was cleared out and temporarily became their residence. It is much more spacious here. A large house can accommodate 20 to 30 people. There is no gender division, but a simple toilet is provided. Bathing is basically impossible, but basic heating can be guaranteed. Although it will not be too hot, it will not freeze people to death. Thanks to the development of advanced technology, they are not required to provide labor for the navigation of the ship. So they are also required not to leave their area and go to the upper space. People crowded into the Jinfeng and then came to their respective living environments. When the luggage was put down, and they had their own beds, they completely put down the big stone in their hearts. Finally, I'm leaving this damn place. The other side of the sea must be very good. People who don't know what the outside world is like are naively looking forward to it. Chapter 8:17 Bravely Take Responsibility, Add 1. Zhang Yi called Lao Tian to the captain's room. There are more than 200 people down there. Can you manage them all? Zhang Yi asked bluntly. He hated trouble the most, so he was too lazy to take care of this kind of thing himself, and Lao Tian would definitely do the daily trivialities. Lao Tian chuckled. Don't worry, Mr. Zhang. I have been at sea for so many years, and I have seen all kinds of crew members. I have managed bigger ships and more people. There won't be any trouble. It's just... He hesitated. Zhang Yi looked at his strange eyes and asked with a smile, Just tell me if you have anything to say. Lao Tian said frankly, These people on the ship seem to have extraordinary identities. They were all high-ranking officials in the past. Maybe some of them will jump out and cause trouble after living a comfortable life for a few days. I, Lao Tian, don't care about them. I just don't know if they will cause any trouble to you. Zhang Yi sneered. No trouble at all. Just clean up as you need to. When necessary, he pointed to the pistol on Lao Tian's waist. Don't save the bullets, just empty the magazine. If anyone dares to be dishonest after getting on the boat, Zhang Yi doesn't mind throwing their bodies into the sea to feed the sharks. After all, human life is worthless now. Lao Tian felt more at ease with Zhang Yi's words. A cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he subconsciously reached behind him to touch his whip. He has a way to teach those ignorant guys a lesson. Otherwise, how do you think the managers treated the slaves and laborers at the Chaoyu base? Let's start the boat. We should go back. Zhang Yi turned and returned to the cabin. Lao Tian licked his cracked lips, with a smirk on his face. He loves to discipline those self-righteous bigwigs the most. At this time, a crew member came over and said something in his ear. Do you want to tell the captain? The crew member asked. Old Tian frowned. The captain handles everything. What else do we need to do? We can do this kind of thing ourselves. He came to the edge of the hull, leaned on the railing and looked down. At this time, a strange scene appeared on the edge of the Jinfeng. Many hooks were hung on the hull, and the refugees were struggling to climb onto the ship like grasshoppers on a rope. Some windows below were open, ready to receive them. You want to play this trick on me, right? Hee hee. Old Tian smiled, but he was like a devil. When the people below saw that they were discovered, their faces turned pale in an instant. Old Tian pulled out his submachine gun and aimed at the stowaways. Da-da-da-da-da. The wailing sounded outside the Jinfeng, but it was soon swallowed up by the cold north wind. Those who tried to hitchhike and smuggle were shot into the sea. Those who were ready to receive the stowaways on the ship did not wait for the stowaways, but only saw the blood rain outside, and then the bodies fell into the cold sea one by one. Ah! Several women screamed in fear. The other people in the cabin had a gloomy face. The people on this ship are too cruel. Someone couldn't help but say. As soon as the sentence came out, someone gave him a sharp look, signaling him not to talk nonsense. The man hurriedly shut up. After all, Zhou Andy's example was right in front of him. No one knew who would be the next person to be driven off the ship. After the ship started, the only way to get off the ship was to be thrown into the sea, and there was no doubt of death. Someone cautiously went to the entrance to look out, and only breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that there were no crew members guarding nearby. On the Yenlu group side, because there were 8 people in a room, the space was relatively narrow, but it also gave people a sense of group psychology in a private space. Foreigner by Mo and Silla official Che Haiching stayed in the same room. Both of them were on the lower bunk. Listening to the gunshots outside, by Mo leaned against the cabin, his face full of melancholy. Too cruel, they are too cruel. They kill people. At every turn. What's the difference between them and the bad guys on the island? Will we be killed on the way? Che Haiching came over and said with a smile, "You are Colombian, it's hard to say." It seems that Mr. Zhang doesn't like Colombians very much. Bai Mo stared. Oh, God, don't scare me. You have made me feel that this is a medieval slave ship, and I am a slave on the ship, and I will be thrown into the sea to feed sharks at any time. Che Haiching laughed evilly. Who knows? This place is thousands of kilometers away from Huashu country. We have to sail for at least 1 or 2 months. Anything can happen on the way. He originally intended to scare Bai Mo, but as he spoke, he couldn't help frowning. I hope the voyage goes smoothly, otherwise, if something goes wrong, we will definitely be thrown into the sea. We may become their supplies. Bai Mo's heart was getting more and more frightened. He hugged his arms tightly, terrified. Why don't they send someone over? Come to save me. Did Colombia really abandon its citizens? Zhang Yi returned to the cabin, planning to call Li Zhongyu over and talk to him in detail about the source of God. There were some things that were not convenient to ask on the island before, but now he would not let go of this opportunity. But as soon as he came back, he met Zhu Yonk, who was hurrying over. Mr. Zhang, you are finally back. Do you have diapers and milk powder here? Zhang Yi spread his hands. Do you think I look like someone who has those things? Of course not. Zhang Yi is not married and has no children. But in fact he does have one. But he won't give it to me. Zhu Yonk frowned slightly, with an embarrassed look on her face. She had brought the child back because she felt sorry for him. But she acted on impulse at the time and didn't consider the consequences. As a result, after the child woke up, he kept crying in her room. She was panicked, and after thinking about it, she could only ask Zhou Kuer for help. Although Zhou Kuer had no experience in taking care of children, she had been a doctor and was more meticulous. After coming over to take a look at the child, she said immediately, he is not sick, so he is crying probably because he is hungry or needs a diaper change. Zhu Yonk was stunned. How could she take care of a child? How could she know how to change a child's diaper? Besides, there were no diapers on this ship. Zhou Kuer smiled and gestured to her that she could go to Zhang Yi to ask. She knew that Zhang Yi had those things, but whether Zhang Yi would give them to her or not depended on Zhang Yi's mood. So the next scene happened. Zhu Yonk was tangled. Zhang Yi sighed, and then encouraged her with a serious face. Since you have chosen to take on this responsibility, then do it well. Come on. I support you. I believe you can be a good mother. Chapter 8:18. It's difficult to raise a baby. Zhang Yi looked sincere, but it was Zhu Yonk who was at a loss. She hesitated, not knowing what to do. I've never taken care of a child before. Zhang Yi said, everything has to have a first time. Didn't you say before that children are easy to take care of? They eat less and sleep more, so how much trouble can they cause? He patted Zhu Yonk on the shoulder and said, I believe in you. You should take good care of the child during this period. I will arrange for others to do the rest. After Zhang Yi finished speaking, he gave her an encouraging look and walked away. Zhu Yonk was a little at a loss. After thinking for a long time, she couldn't come up with an idea. At this time, Zhou Kuer came over from her room and met Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi gave her a strange look, which made Zhou Kuer couldn't help laughing. Zhou Kuer came to Zhu Yonk and said softly, the child has been crying. Go and take a look. Zhu Yonk stamped her feet anxiously. I don't know what to do. Zhou Kuer said helplessly. Go to the kitchen and get some rice porridge for him. In addition, I saw that his swaddling clothes are wet. You have to change his diaper quickly. But where can I find diapers for him? Zhou Kuer said. He uses diapers made from scraps of clothes. Where can I find the kind of diapers sold in supermarkets now? As she was talking, Zhang Yi's voice came from behind. Kuer, come here.
There are so many people on the ship.
We have to discuss epidemic prevention to prevent infectious diseases on the ship. Zhou Kuer said to Zhu Yonk. Hurry up and do it. I'll go and get busy first. Zhu Yung wanted Zhou Qi to help her, but Zhou Qi didn't stay and left in small steps. She gritted her teeth and had to go to the kitchen to ask the chef to make a bowl of rice porridge for the child. Then she went back to prepare diapers for him. Before anyone even got to the room, they heard the deafening cry, which even penetrated the cabin with good sound insulation. Zhu Yung gritted her teeth and pushed the door open. The child on the bed had already cried with red eyes and screamed, and the sheets below were soaked with yellow liquid. Zhu Yung's face was pale, and she screamed, my sheets. In this kind of weather, it is very difficult to dry the sheets, especially the mattress is probably soaked. How can she sleep? Zhu Yung complained bitterly, and for the first time, she had a strong sense of regret. She shouldn't have taken on this task right away. Originally, she proposed to Zhang Yi to take the child with her because she had never thought that she would need to take care of him.
There is an old saying,
people with their hands in their trouser pockets are always overconfident. When you don't have to work, of course you can brag. On the contrary, when things really fall on your head, you will feel the difficulty of the task. Zhu Yung was overwhelmed, but at this time, she smelled a sour and unpleasant smell. The child not only peed, but also defecated. Anyone who has taken care of a child knows how sour and smelly a child's excrement is. The room was not big and the heater was on, which made the smell even more sour. The pampered Miss Zhu retched and ran out of the house to take a few deep breaths before she recovered. However, the crying in the room continued. The room was not far from Zhang Yi's room, and the sound could be heard. Zhu Yung was immediately angry when she thought that she would be ridiculed by others if she didn't take care of the child well. I don't believe I can't take care of a child well. She was mentally prepared, and then she suddenly opened the door and rushed in. Changing diapers is an extremely difficult task, especially for novices. The diaper used by the child is called jiezi in the Huashu dialect. There is no waterproof function, just a few layers of coarse cloth, and then stuffed under the child's buttocks. As soon as Zhu Yung put her hands on it, she immediately felt her hands wet. She screamed again. This time, she cried, and she cried with the child. Just changing a diaper made her feel humiliated. But Zhang Yi, who heard the crying next door, laughed happily. He sat on the sofa, drinking silk stocking milk tea elegantly, and then said to Zhou Qi, "Guess how long it will take her to change the diaper today?" Zhou Qi couldn't help but tilt her head to think for a while, and then shook her head vigorously. "I think it's too risky." She had seen her friends take care of children before, and even made her afraid of pregnancy. That's not a little angel, it's a little devil, which can drive a normal adult crazy. Changing diapers, opening the diaper and seeing the yellow and white things, will make people have the urge to ascend to heaven. Anyway, Zhou Qi asked herself that she would have to adapt for a while if she was asked to do it. This is based on the premise that Zhou Qi has worked in a hospital and has a strong psychological quality. Zhang Yi shrugged. Let's wait and see. After all, she picked it, idols. Lao Zhu said that letting Zhu Yung come out this time is also to let her broaden her horizons, understand the difficulties of life in the outside world. Zhang Yi was still thinking about what to do to make her realize it clearly. As a result, Zhu Yung took on a big burden for herself. Zhang Yi was almost laughing to death when he saw Zhu Yung holding the child. Zhang Yi did not intend to help Zhu Yung with the problem. He also told Zhou Qi and other people on the boat not to help Zhu Yung. The main thing was to do the work he had contracted by himself. He left the cabin and went down to the area where the people of the Yenlu group lived. When he came over, there were several people in the cabin whispering. When they saw Zhang Yi, they were so scared that they quickly shut their mouths and then greeted him with a flattering smile. "Hello, Mr. Zhang." Zhang Yi asked, "Where's Li Zongyu? Let him come to see me." Someone immediately went to find Li Zongyu. Soon Li Zongyu trotted to Zhang Yi. "Mr. Zhang, you are looking for me." Zhang Yi said, "Come with me. There is something I want to talk to you about." "Oh, okay." Li Zongyu agreed with a smile, without any hesitation. He had been prepared in his heart. After all, The secret he kept was exactly the purpose of Jiangnan district, sending people to rescue them from thousands of kilometers away. Zhang Yi brought Li Zhongyu to the deck. There was no one here except them. Li Zhongyu was wearing a cold-proof down jacket, and he could withstand the low temperature of more than 20 degrees below zero. Zhang Yi walked to the railing, leaned against it, and asked lightly, "Tell me the story about that stone." Li Zhongyu stretched out his hand, took out a stone from his pocket, and slowly handed it to Zhang Yi. It was a yellow stone somewhat like Tianhuang stone, and it looked ordinary on the surface. But the first time Zhang Yi saw it, he felt his DNA move. Chapter 8-19 Elsewhere. Living things have instincts inherited from their ancestors. They are engraved in their DNA. The moment Zhang Yi saw the yellow stone, his genes were all excited, as if he had discovered something that his genes were eager to obtain. Is this the source of God? Zhang Yi glanced at Li Zhongyu and calmly reached out to take the stone. He could feel that there was still a trace of strange power left in it, but there was not much left. "Where did you get this thing?" Li Zhongyu smiled. "Sorry, I can't tell you now. You must ensure that I and the people around me get ashore safely." Zhang Yi smiled with a hint of playfulness. "Is that so?" He raised the stone in his hand and pointed it at the pale sun in the sky, but he could not see anything. Zhang Yi thought to himself, "Is there a secret to breaking through the genetic restrictions in it? I'll keep the stone. Do you have any objection?" Zhang Yi said, stuffing the stone into his pocket. Li Zhongyu nodded, "Of course." Zhang Yi nodded. "That's good. That's it. There's nothing for you to do. Go back and get busy." Li Zhongyu's face was still a little bit unbelievable. Zhang Yi let him go back so easily. Because in his opinion, Zhang Yi was a very cruel person. Li Zhongyu was even prepared to be coerced and lured by Zhang Yi, or even beaten. But Zhang Yi's frivolous attitude made him confused. He didn't know that his secret was not very attractive to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi was purely curious, so he asked casually. As for the mysterious source of God, whether it exists or not, and what it is, Zhang Yi really doesn't care that much. He hates trouble. Let Jiangnan district handle the troublesome things. Maybe he is a good person. Li Zhongyu shook his head. Although he didn't know Zhang Yi's character for the time being, Zhang Yi's actions made him have a certain liking for Zhang Yi. The Jin foam left the waters of Yenlu Island and began to sail into the deep sea, returning to Huashu country along the original route. It took them more than 2 months to come here. However, after getting familiar with the route, the return time can be greatly shortened, and it is expected to arrive within 50 days. By then, it will be around November. It has been nearly a year since the end of the world. Sometimes Zhang Yi can't help but sigh that time flies like a white horse. But in the past 6 months, too many things have happened around him. On the Jin foam, as the number of people increases, management is required every day. Lao Tian is responsible for this aspect. The living conditions on the ship are divided into 4 levels. Zhang Yi's meals are not managed by the kitchen, and they are all Zhang Yi's own delicacies. So the kitchen on the ship has to supply meals for each area below Zhu Yunk. Zhu Yunk and the crew enjoy a rich meal, with chicken, fish, meat, and eggs. The 3rd level is the members of the Yenlu group, who can also have some protein supply every day. Although there is less meat, there is still some. As for the 4th level, that is, the Huashu people and expatriates who were later selected to board the ship, they can only eat meat every 3 days. However, the basic food supply can meet everyone's needs. At the beginning, no one had any objection to such living conditions. Compared with the food on Yenlu Island, their food quality at this time has improved a lot. Staying in the cabin every day, except for being a little bored, at least you can get enough food and clothing. But as the old saying goes, some people can't eat too much. When you are hungry, you only have one kind of trouble. After eating, you will have countless troubles. Soon, the troublemaker came. Zhu Yunk found Zhang Yi and asked to assign a separate house to Sun Wanqi. She is my junior schoolmate after all, and her personality is a bit simple. Living in a mixed room, I am worried that something will happen to her. It just so happens that I am too busy to take care of the child alone, and I need someone to help me. Zhang Yi laughed when he heard this. Why, you can live in the cave, but now you are not used to it on the boat. If you ask me, you are just a cheap bone. Zhu Young's demeanor was a little unnatural. In fact, she did this for her own consideration. After only a few days, she was almost tortured crazy by the baby. However, due to Zhang Yi's instruction, no one in the crew was willing to help her take care of the child. At this time, her diligent junior schoolmate came over and offered to help. In addition, Zhu Young was not in a good mood after 2 months at sea. Now she finally found someone to talk to and immediately regarded Sun Wenxi as a confidant. Sun Wenxi took the opportunity to ask to move to the independent room upstairs. As a best friend, she of course agreed. It's just a house. There are vacancies upstairs. Zhu Young pouted a little unhappily. She looked at Zhang Yi, complained, "You all don't want to help me. Finally someone comes to help me, but you still don't agree." Zhang Yi asked back, "There are so many people living downstairs, including women. Why can everyone else tolerate it, but she has to be special? If I had known that she couldn't stand living together, wouldn't it have been better to just throw her down when she got on the boat?" Zhu Young was speechless for a moment and could only look at Zhang Yi with a pleading expression. "Zhang Yi, you just think of it as me begging you, okay? I really need someone to help me."
Zhang Yi thought about it.
There are indeed many empty rooms on their floor, so it doesn't matter to give Sun Wenxi a room, in order to prevent Zhu Young from coming over to bother him all day. But when Zhang Yi thought of the woman's style of doing things, he didn't like it very much. So he said, "There is no room available. Everyone is very busy. But there is a utility room for her to live in." Zhu Young said in surprise, "Utility room? Wouldn't it be very dirty?" Zhang Yi sneered. Didn't she think it was unsafe to live together, so she wanted a single room? Then she thinks it's dirty? She has hands and feet. She can clean it up by herself. She can live there if she wants. No, live there. She lives there." Zhu Young hurriedly agreed. If Sun Wenxi didn't help, she didn't know how to take care of the child by herself. After getting Zhang Yi's permission, Zhu Young came to the Yanlu group and asked Sun Wenxi to move to the upper floor. When the people in the Yanlu group heard this, they all cast envious eyes at Sun Wenxi. There were also girls in the group who couldn't help asking Zhu Young, "Miss Zhu, can we also apply for a separate room? Living here with so many people, it's not very convenient for us girls. As long as things start, they will arouse endless ideas." Zhu Young looked a little helpless. "I'm afraid this won't work. Sun Wenxi is going to help me take care of Tommy, but we can also help you take care of the child." I don't need so many people." Chapter 8, 20 Trouble. Zhu Young opened such an opening for Sun Wenxi, and immediately the other members of the Yanlu group began to move. Especially the women like Sun Wenxi, they all wanted to strive to live in the upper level. Who doesn't know that the conditions there are much better than the lower level? But Zhu Young couldn't do that, because this ship belonged to Zhang Yi, and God knew how difficult it would be for her to ask Zhang Yi for something. A group of women heard Zhu Young's refusal, and their faces were full of displeasure. Although they didn't dare to get angry, they still complained. "We are all women. Why do you only take care of her? We are also very hard. I see there are still many empty rooms upstairs. What's wrong with giving some to us to live in? If you ask me, those crew members are all big and strong men. Let them live downstairs." That's right, when I was in college, those men would give us the good dormitories. These crew members don't know how to respect women. Zhu Young gathered her hair awkwardly, not knowing how to respond to these topics. Soon Wenxi came over, hugged her arm and said to the others, "Why are you shouting? It's good enough to take you away from that hellhole. Why are you still nitpicking? Humph, what's the relationship between me and the senior sister, and what's the relationship between you and her?" she said with a smug look on her face. "And let me tell you, even if the senior sister doesn't go to find the Zhang guy, he is to arrange a room for me. Do you know who my father and my grandfather are?" The women of the Yanlu group looked unhappy, but they could do nothing about it, because Sun Wenxi's identity was really extraordinary and many of her family members held important positions in the unit. Sun Wenxi proudly took Zhu Young's hand. "Alice, let's go. Don't worry about them." Sun Wenxi followed Zhu Young and happily came to the upper floor. Zhu Young took the key and took her to the utility room. When she opened the door, she saw that it was full of mops, rags, and large water pipes. There were even black diesel stains on the wall, and the smell of diesel could be clearly smelled. Senior, you got the wrong room, didn't you? Soon Wanshi smiled and looked at Zhu Young, unable to believe that this was the room assigned to her. Zhu Young said calmly, "This is it. This is it. I have discussed it with him. Don't be picky. It's better to stay here than to live in a big bunk bed down there, right?" Soon Wanshi's mouth flattened like a duck, aggrieved. "I thought you had a lot of say on the ship." Zhu Young began to feel uncomfortable all over. "Ahem, of course. My status on the ship is similar to Zhang Yi's. It's just that the living conditions are really limited now. It's already very good to find you this room temporarily. I asked for a mattress and blanket for you. You can clean it up yourself. Although this room is a little shabby, it's still good to clean it up." Zhu Young comforted her casually and mentioned her needs. "Come over and help me take care of Tommy. He needs to change diapers several times a day. I have torn several pieces of clothes, and now they are not enough. Please help me wash the diapers." Although Soon Wanshi was a little dissatisfied, it was much better here than down there, where a group of people were crowded in a room. She followed Zhu Young to wash Tommy's diapers. As a result, when she came, in order to let Zhu Young fight for her room, she made a lot of promises. But she didn't expect that the diapers piled up like a small mountain, and they were covered with baby excrement. Ugh. Soon Wanshi retched, but in exchange for living in a single room, she had to endure the nausea and wash these diapers by hand. Soon it was time for lunch. 3 meals a day were prepared in the kitchen and distributed to people on each floor. The food was easy to make, as they were all pre-prepared dishes. All they needed to do was heat them up and add a bowl of rice. That's why Zhang Yi didn't eat with them. Zhang Yi and Zhou Ke got up late, so they had breakfast and lunch together. He came out for a stroll at lunchtime and took a look at the situation on the ship. But there was a commotion in the cafeteria. Zhang Yi heard a woman crying and Zhu Young's unhappy argument. He frowned, knowing that it must be 2 women making trouble again. Because except for them, no one else was allowed to come to the upper floor to eat. Zhang Yi walked over and saw that Zhu Young was arguing with the chef with Sun Wanshi, and Lao Tian was explaining helplessly beside them. Zhu Young stared at the chef and asked, "Why can't we give her an extra meal? Mr. Zhang has agreed to let her live on the upper level. It's just a piece of cake to prepare an extra meal." The chef spread his hands helplessly and said, "Ms. Zhu, you don't know how expensive firewood and rice are until you run a household. The captain gives us a fixed amount of food per person, and it's very clear how much each person gets. The food supply on the upper level is only for 17 of us. If we give Miss Su 1 meal, there won't be enough for everyone. How about you go and discuss it with the captain?" Zhang Yi was outside, watching the excitement with his arms folded. At this time, he basically understood what was going on. The people downstairs all ate in a big pot. After Soon Wanshi came to the upper level, she naturally wouldn't go back to eat those things. Zhang Yi's mouth, but soon she was discovered by Zhu Young. Zhu Young came over angrily and said to Zhang Yi, "Mr. Zhang, no matter what, I am also one of the leaders of the rescue mission. Don't I even have the power to distribute food to the assistants? You have a fart." Zhang Yi complained in his heart. He didn't like Soon Wanshi, the saint. But he was too lazy to waste his thoughts on such a small matter, so he said to the chef, "In the future, when you send food to the people of the Yenlu group, just serve her food first and keep it." Unexpectedly, the chef spread his hands. "That's what I said," but Miss Su disagreed. Zhang Yi was a little surprised. "Are you still not happy?" Soon Wanshi's eyes were full of tears, and she stared at Zhang Yi stubbornly. "I am also a lady from an official family. Why should I eat bad food? I want to eat the same as my senior sisters." It turned out that when she was eating with Zhu Young, she saw that Zhu Young's food standard was too different from hers, and she was immediately unhappy. Because of such a small matter, they started a fight in the kitchen, and the crew couldn't eat. Zhang Yi's eyes flashed with impatience. He ignored Soon Wanshi and turned to look at Zhu Young. "You brought the person up here. What do you think should be done about this matters? Zhu Yung frowned. She felt Zhang Yi's displeasure. But this time, she didn't intend to give in. Because Sun Wanshi was hers. If she backed down this time, how could she have the face to talk about in the future?